we're doing a short video here. We are going to be measuring on a block and a head how to measure for the length of the studs you're going to need for your engine. Now, we've got the deck surface of the block. Some engines have a counter bore. Now the counter bore is the distance from the surface of the block to the start of the thread. You can measure that different ways. You can use a caliper, you can use a steel rule, a tape measure, whatever. Let's just say that is 1 inch. Now we've got a little worksheet here. You'll find it on the website. You can print it out. You just pick out whichever one you're working with and just write down 1 inch, because that's what we said was the depth of the counter bore. Now we have to look at the length through the head or the main cap or whatever you're fastening. Just say that the distance from the top of the head to where it matches the block is 6.5 inches. So we got 1 inch plus 6.5. So we've got 7.5 inches of what we call the inside length. The inside length is the distance from where this would contact to the nut, basically the flange of the nut. Now, studs are not always the same. This is one of the ones we make here at Fanta Machine. This is one I purchased from somebody else. Now if you look at it, you see quite a difference in the length of the threads and the length of the body in between. And that is what we call the inside length. Now, if you take the stud, screw it into the block, finger tight. You don't want to crank it, you don't want to jam it, because then the threads aren't pulling evenly. The nut goes on, so there's about 2 threads sticking up. That's because the first thread is never perfectly formed, and the second one is just to give it a little bit extra. Now this one, when it's set there, is 4 3/4 of an inch. Now we can run it down. Now you don't want to run it down and jam it tight, because you've got nothing left over, because everything compresses. Studs stretch, very little, but they do stretch. Heads compress, not much, but they do. So you just back it off, eighth of an inch or so, just to give yourself plenty of extra. And that comes out to about 3 7/8. And you can see that's how much extra room you've got over and above. That's from one of our competitors. You got a lot more range. You don't have a lot of thread there. If you measure everything perfectly, it works fine. Make a little mistake, well, I wish I'd have bought the different length. Now, after you've measured the inside length and come up with that, 7.5 inches, we've got a chart. Print it out. Now, if you need one that's 7.5 inches on the inside length, a 10 inch will range from 6 7/8 up to 7 3/4. So that gives you at least an extra 1/4 of an inch up and quite a ways down. The little extra threads take very little more to manufacture, but it gives you more versatility. The worksheet for the length of the studs. This is for a typical 6-cylinder engine. If you got a 4-cylinder, of course, you don't fill them all in. If you got something different, if it doesn't use them all, you just fill in the ones you need. Keep track of them all. Say the front of the head, left side, right side. Measure them. Make sure you correspond the engine with the head, you know, the block with the head. And then, after figuring out all those, go to the chart, figure out what you need, call them in.